You're listening to Unmuted with Papamutes.
Welcome to Papamutes, everybody. Today, my guest is jclark. Clark is the New York Times best-selling author of The Ones We Choose and The Last Flight, which was also a #1 international bestseller and has been translated into more than 20 languages. Her most recent book, The Lies I Tell, which I recently completed, is awesome. She lives in Los Angeles. It's 6 a.m. and she's wide awake. Julie, welcome to Papamutes.
Thanks for having me.
Have you always been an early morning person?
Yeah, it's just when I get my writing work done. So I wake up about 3:45 or so, have a big pot of coffee and get to work. And I'm usually done with work by about 6. So it works
okay.
well
Good. Awesome. Yeah. Now, when did the writing bug hit you? And I'm not talking about like writing for college. And when did you say, I want to take it to the next step and see if I can get something published and sold?
It's something that I wanted to do from a very young age. I spent a little bit of time in my 20s really entertaining it seriously, taking some writing classes, writing some short stories. But I just wasn't really ready yet to make that leap. So I, didn't go that route. I got my teaching credential. I've been a teacher for the past 25 years. Single mom. So I've been busy. And it wasn't until probably 2013 that I really said, you know what, that's still something that I want to do. I want to try it. And so I just wrote a book to see if I could do it. And it wasn't very good. And I workshopped it and I revised it and tried to get a literary agent with it, and I couldn't. And so I wrote a different book, and that book ultimately was what got me my agent and what got me my first book deal. And so I would say all of that happened. So I would say started writing for real in 2013 and got my agent 3 years after that, my book deal 1 year after that, my first book published in 2018. So
awesome. Now, were your parents writers or in the creative arts, any form?
No, my mother was a real estate agent for many, many years. So I drew heavily upon growing up in a real estate family. For The Lies I Tell, there's a very big real estate, con that's pulled in that book. But I also, my dad is a musician. Very talented musician, although he doesn't do that for a living. My brother is a comic book artist. My grandfather was a, painter for fun and fairly talented. My mom is also fairly talented as a painter for fun, but nobody really has made, my brother and I make our living doing our art, but no one else in our family has done that.
Awesome. Now, nowadays, as you know, people can just Google The Lies I Tell and get an idea what it's about. So for people who haven't heard about it, they're tuning in, they're not, what is The Lies I Tell about?
Okay. The Lies I Tell is the story of Meg Williams, who's a con artist traveling the country under assumed names. She's creating elaborate backstories to back up whatever lies she's telling. But she's not just grifting for profit, though that is a nice side gig. She's really building her skills as a con artist. She has one big con that she's been planning and thinking about for over a decade. And it's a man in Los Angeles who she believes is responsible for the destruction of her childhood. He stole their family home out from under them and had her living in her car. Right out of high school, her mother had passed away. And so she wants to return to Los Angeles and balance the scales of justice. He got away with something that he shouldn't have. And so she has this big plan to build her skills, figure out how to be really, really good at this. And she does many, many years of practice. But what she doesn't know is that there's an investigative reporter named Kat Roberts, who is in Los Angeles waiting for Meg to return. And Kat was collateral damage on a con that Meg pulled many years ago. And Kat blames Meg for the destruction of her life. And so as the two women sort of circle each other and befriend each other and start becoming more and more intertwined in each other's lives, it's suddenly unclear, like, who's the cat, who's the mouse, who's conning whom, and what either of their targets really is.
I agree. Obviously I knew the answer, but it's a great book. I mean, and the last flight has got me sucked in, but that's another story. Are any of the characters in the lies I tell based on people you knew? Not that you hung out with con artists, but how do you
Yeah.
come up with, like, I'm reading it and I'm saying, wow, somebody could really do this if they're a con artist. How do you know that's correct information for being a con artist? You know what I mean?
Uh, a lot of research. You're right. I don't. None of the characters in the book are based on anybody, but a lot of research. So I did a lot of research on con artists. I listened to a lot of true crime
No,
podcasts.
there's a lot out
Uh,
there.
yeah, and there's a lot out there, specifically on con artists and how they sort of build their skills and weasel their way into people's lives. I read a great book called The Confidence Game by Maria Konnikova, which sort of handles the psychology of con artists and
Okay.
the psychology of their targets as well. What makes people fall for these outrageous stories that the rest of us from the outside looking in are kind of like, why didn't you see this? And con artists are really, really good at picking their targets, number one, and making sure that they are, you know, finding vulnerable people who have needs that the con artist then figures out how to give them what they need.
Now, how do you come up with the title? Is that like, do you just workbook a bunch of titles? Because it's a perfect title, but are you asking
Yeah,
other people or do you just come up with a bunch and
I'm not great at coming up with titles. So we workshopped this one for a while. My publisher Sourcebooks does a lot of market research. So we had a lot of title options that we test marketed basically. And this one was the one that test marketed the best. So that's how we do that.
now how long is the process from the initial idea? You
Mhm.
know, I got an idea for a story. You got to come up with something, right?
Yeah.
Let's take the lies I tell from the initial concept to it's on the shelf being sold. What are we talking about? I guess it varies with different books, but just for people that might, have
Yeah.
no idea, is it a
It does.
year, couple years?
Yeah, it does vary for book by book. Generally, the pace that I've been on, this is Lies I Tell is my third book.
Hmm.
I generally publish a book every 2 years. So the Ones We Choose came out in 2018. The Last Flight came out in 2020. The Lies I Tell in 2022. I'm kind of on pace for a 2024 publication of my next book, but every book is different.
Hmm.
I prefer to spend about a year writing a book, really getting into it and getting into the weeds of it, and then another year of editing with my editor and getting it into production. That takes another year at least. So normally, with both The Lies I Tell and The Last Flight, we went into production at the end of August. um, Copy edits, page proofs, and the book goes to print sometime in probably February or March of the following year for a June publication. So
I,
it's a full year.
okay, so is the joy of writing for you the process? Is it the writing, or is it when it's completed and you're out doing, podcast and signing books? Which is the joy? I mean, they're probably both enjoyable, but which is more joyful?
It's interesting because I mean they're both very much different parts of the same job. Um, whatever stage I'm in, I'm glad I'm not in the other stage, right? So like it's so like last summer, for example, I didn't release a book and I had several close friends who were releasing books. And I just remember happily working on my edits. Like, I'm so glad I'm not releasing a book this summer. It's crazy making. I don't want to be doing that right now. I'd
Mhm.
rather be doing this. Now, this summer, I'm thinking, I'm so glad that I didn't have to spend my whole summer working on edits. I get to go out and talk to people and sign books. And this is the fun part of, writing a book, is meeting all my readers and traveling
Yeah.
all over the country. So I think that, I enjoy whatever, I'm lucky, I enjoy whatever stage I happen to be in. And I know that, there are pros and cons to both. And so just appreciating the one that you're in makes it a lot more fun.
Now, when you found out you are, how do you become a New York Times best-selling author? In other words, do you get notified? Hey, Julie,
Oh,
this is Joe Smith, and I know it's probably number of sales and stuff, but how are you officially given that so you can actually promote yourself that way and not being fraudulent?
Um, the list generally comes out to publishers, editors, industry people first on Wednesdays. It usually hits around 1 to 2 p.m. my time. And so if you're on the list, your editor will call you. Your editor will call you and be like, guess what? And it's all very exciting and, lots of screaming and yelling and jumping up and down.
It's like
And
winning the
then
Oscar. I mean, it's like,
yeah, I mean,
hey.
it's based on sales for sure,
Hmm.
but it's not, it's a very, no one can really figure out how it's all weighted and how it works. The New York Times likes to be very mysterious about that. And so, it's kind of hard. It's hard to know, but it is for sure based on sales. But how they weight different sales at different outlets, they keep that kind of hush hush.
It's awesome. I mean, it has to be thrilling to be able to put that in front or behind your name. It's great. Um,
Definitely.
yeah. So, besides the talent to write, what other qualities does a wannabe writer need besides talent? Obviously, what else would they have to get books published and the whole process?
You really just have to be persistent. You have to understand that there's a lot of rejection in this
Hmm.
industry. A lot of agents say no, a lot of editors say no, a lot of publishers say no, a lot of readers say no. And so you have to be always working um, on your next idea. So I think the mistake I see a lot of writers who are early in their career making, who aren't yet agented, who aren't yet published, uh, attached to one idea and insist that this idea is their best idea. And my experience is always, if one idea isn't working, you got to come up with another one. If you get a call with an agent who maybe wants to represent you, one of the questions they're going to ask you is, what else are you working on? What other ideas do you have? Because they don't want to work on just one book, they want to work on a lot of books. So you need to have ideas ready to go. And if one isn't working, if you keep getting no, 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 I mean, I do think sticking with it and revising it and taking notes and keeping on with that process is important. But there does come a time where you need to say, I think I got to try something different.
Right. Got to move on. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, do you think writing can be taught? And I don't mean formatting paragraphs and stuff. I'm talking about creative writing. Do you feel someone who, I don't know, is not creative can be taught to be creative?
I do.
Really?
I think that you have to understand what your own voice is and figure that out. And for some people, that takes a long time. But I definitely think that by studying excellent writing, you can also become an excellent writer, by looking at some of the great authors out there and really taking their books apart and figuring out what makes them work so well, and also reading books that aren't very well written can also teach you a lot. So if you're not liking a book and you're a writer, I would encourage you to finish it and try to figure out what didn't work and what would you have done differently to make it work. I think that's an important exercise to take. Um, and that will just build your skills. But I think, if you read a lot, you don't need to go get an MFA, you don't need to do any kind of graduate work to be a successful author. I mean, I don't have my MFA.
Okay.
um, but I think that, if you want to write, you have to read heavily, 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 heavily. You need to read a lot, because that's how you're going to see what's selling. That's how you're going to see what works. That's how you're going to get a feel for the way books are paced and marketed. And, finding your own voice is all a part of exploring other people's voices.
Excellent. Now, who do you read?
I read everything. I love all different genres. I write thrillers, but I love reading upmarket women's fiction. I love historical fiction. I love some light fantasy every now and then. Um, yeah, I'll read anything.
Okay. Now, when do you read? But the reason I'm saying that, if you're in the midst of writing, I mean, writing. I'm not a writer, but it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, I'm reading books. I'm like, Jesus, how do they? It's a hard thing to do. Can you be in the midst of writing and like, I don't know, put it down and Saturday afternoon and read somebody else's book, or does that scramble your brain?
I can. I mean, I do my writing in the morning when my mind is fresh and open and kind of a little bit softer than it is in the afternoon. And so I mostly read in the afternoons. I'll read sometimes at lunch, and I'll definitely read after work in the evenings, and on weekends. I like to read, so I'm reading a lot. You
So it
know, it,
doesn't, like, you're reading, like, oh God, that's something that is, I don't know, you don't want to steal ideas, but so it doesn't mess with you, is what it comes down to.
No, I don't think so. I mean, they're two very separate parts of my brain and two very separate parts of my day. And I haven't had that problem.
Have you
Yeah,
had any books optioned for TV?
I have. All three of my books have been optioned.
Now, when you say option, correct me if I'm wrong, that's like they're looking at it. They're considering it, or is it beyond that stage?
Yeah, an option means that a studio or a producer or both would like the option to turn your book into a TV series or a film. And so they will pay you some money to hold on to that option so that nobody else can make it, right? It's almost like they're renting your story idea for a certain amount of time. And in that time, their work is to find a writer for the project, maybe find a studio for the project if it's just a producer that's not attached to a studio.
Mm-hmm.
It often will involve, getting other people to sign on to the project as well. Options are often renewed. So, like, if they don't do it within a set period of time, they can renew the option for another set period of time if they feel like that is something that they keep wanting to pursue. Um, and so when they have all of those things in place, it would require, a pilot to be written, maybe even, a full outline for, if it's a series, multiple, how the series is going to begin, middle, end, like an outline for all of that. And then a studio needs to say, like, yeah, we want to make it, and then it goes into production, and at that point they buy it, which is a different amount of money.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, just
Yeah.
knowing it's there, it's like, wow, this is,
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
is
I mean, it's thrilling. It's nice to know that, people envision your books on a big or a small screen. Like, that's just really exciting.
So, if, your choice, which one of your books would you like to see into a movie?
I actually
If you only
prefer
could have one choice, sorry.
Yeah, I actually prefer TV series to movies. I
Oh,
feel like the books that I write, I think that they would probably be better as a TV series. That's just my personal, like, I don't think a film is like, For the Last Flight, for example, a film, you would lose a lot probably of Eva's backstory and Eva's storyline, simply because in the time you have
okay.
allotted, it just isn't enough time. And as a viewer, I'm more of a TV series. Like, I like to really get into character and get invested in the world and get invested in the time and the place and the families. And, with a film it's only 2.5 hours. But I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I'm not, since all of them have been optioned, I'm not going to pick a favorite.
Okay. um,
Sorry.
no problem.
Whoever can get it made first, that's the one.
What's that? Whatever. Oh,
I I guess whoever can get it made first,
of
that's the
course.
one I'm
Okay.
pursuing.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Reason I ask is I have a segment I call Name That Movie. Now, are you
Mm,
a movie buff? Or,
not really.
but you
No.
have watched movies. I'm assuming you,
Yes, of
yeah.
course.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is simple stuff. This is Name That Movie. Very simple, kind of
Okay.
off the grid here. I'm going to give you a name of a movie, and you tell me
Mhm.
who the star was. Very simple. If I said Rocky, obviously it would be Sylvester
Right.
Stallone. So that's an easy
Right.
one.
You are not
Uh,
playing my strengths here. I'm bad with star names too, but okay, I'll
I
do my
think
best.
you only need one to get a some Papa Mutes merchandise. So
Oh, all
One
right.
correct. Here we go. All right. So, name that movie with Julie Clark. Who starred in the movie Pretty in Pink?
Molly Ringwald.
Correct. You're talking about, you know what you're doing.
Well, I mean, if I didn't know we were talking about movies from the 80s, I mean, that's my childhood. So there we go.
Well,
I did.
I have to research a little bit
Are
here.
we doing like John Hughes movies? Because we could go deep into those.
You could.
Yeah.
Dead Poets Society.
Robin Williams. 2
for 2. She's on fire. Edward Scissorhands.
Johnny Depp.
That is correct. Misery.
Was that Jack Nicholson?
Nope.
No. Who was in that movie?
That would be James Caan.
Oh, man.
Aaron Brockovich.
Julia Roberts.
Another good book made into a movie. Just Mercy.
I don't know that one.
That would be Michael B. Jordan.
Okay.
And last one. And there's a bunch of these, but he's in all of them. Iron Man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger? I don't know.
That
I don't
would
watch
be
the movies.
Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, yeah, I don't watch those movies.
Here's a segment that could be a book. It's called Dead or Alive.
Okay.
I'll give you a celebrity. Well, it doesn't have to be an actor, but someone who's famous. Tell
Okay.
me, dead or alive. Here we go.
Okay.
Dead or alive. James Caan.
I don't know.
Gotta
I don't
pick
know.
one. Gotta pick one.
Dead?
What's your gut say?
Dead?
He is dead. He just died.
Okay.
like a month ago.
Yeah.
Actor William Hurt.
Kirk?
Hurt.
Oh, Hurt. I think alive.
Dead. He
Oh.
just recently died too.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't pay attention to this stuff. Yeah.
Actor William Shatner, aka Star Trek.
Oh, he's alive. He's alive still.
He is alive.
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth II.
Oh, she's alive, right? I hope.
She is. She is
Yeah,
still.
okay.
I mean, she's up there, but she's alive.
I know. I worry about her a little bit.
Talk show host and former mayor, actually, Jerry Springer. Do you know who that is, though? That had that
I do know who he is,
Yeah.
but like, I have no idea.
crazy TV show. He's alive.
Okay.
Barbara Walters.
She's alive.
She is alive. Last one. Meatloaf, the singer, not the food.
I think Meatloaf is dead.
He is dead. Died this year. I mean, a lot of deaths this year. So what's coming up in the future for Julie Clark fans?
I'm working on my next book. And, gearing up for a new school year, getting my kids off and back to school as well. Looking forward to cooler weather in the fall. I mean, it's not that hot here in Los Angeles, but it's hot for us, which is, high 70s, mid 80s, sometimes up to 90. We don't like that too much. So, looking forward to some fall weather and yeah, just closing out this year.
Awesome. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Sure.
It's been a blast. I will be in touch and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Unmuted with Papamutes.